Hey guys, and welcome back. I am back with Mr. Korean Cool, Mr. John Nance. How you doing, my friend?
Oh, hey, what's up, buddy?
What are we calling 2026? The winter that wouldn't end? Is that the official title?
God, who pissed off Mother Nature? Because holy crap,
That fucking groundhog, man. He had to go fuck shadow, you know?
God, Punxsutawney Phil, you're a punk. But yeah, it's doing well first and foremost. But this weather, like we're getting rain. I'm sure you're getting rain. They're talking about snow, but they don't know how many inches of snow we're supposed to get. It's like, come on.
Just give me an answer. Am I going to be up to my fucking chest in snow? Am I going to be shoveling for 4 hours, or do I have a couple snowflakes to worry about?
Yeah, it's kind of like a running joke between me and several folks who talk about weather or ask about it. I'm like, meteorology is like one of the couple sciences where you go to college for 4 years to learn how to guess.
Yeah, it's called theoretical science, and somehow
my gosh.
I always personally thought science was based on something we in the real world like to call facts. But no, they get theoretical science. They could just do whatever they want.
Yeah, but it's gloomy. And I apologize. That's a joke, meteorologists who may be listening. But yeah, it's weird as you can see, even with the lighting, it's still just so gloomy out. But
those days,
we're here talking. We're getting ready to talk about comic books, right?
Yes. Today, guys, it's going to be a fun one because we're going to be talking about a comic book that you introduced me to, and I'm so glad you did. I'll just say that to give you a hint at what I think about it ahead of time. I'll get into what I think later. We're going to be talking about our man, Mr. Bernie Wrightson, which we actually talked about. Awesome shirt, by the way. We talked about him a couple episodes ago in our Frankenstein episode. Now, It's just a behind the scenes note, guys, because I'm a slacker. We were supposed to talk about 2 graphic novels, but my asshole boss decided to unload a completely unnecessary work on me towards the end of the week. And because I was already falling behind, we're only doing 1 comic book today, but that's okay. This one I think is actually worthy of its own episode just because it's such a cool comic book. Like I said, we're going to be talking about a comic book that came out in 2007 by Bernie Wrightson and Steve Niles called The City of Others. And this was, like I said, this was your pick. And with that said, I'm going to let you take the lead and let us give us folks here a little more info about the world of Bernie Wrightson and Steve Niles and City of Others.
Okay, so City of Others, initially published by Dark Horse Comics, eventually went over to IDW to publish several others. And the backstory is Steve Niles met Wrightson at a Dallas comic convention. And, just like me, just like several other fans, he was just like, oh, and just, wanted to just like shoot the shit with him. And they got together and was hanging out. I think they said they actually have an interview on YouTube. You guys can find it where they talk about how they just got together and they were just talking. And I don't know what you call it. Like, musicians, when they get together, they jam, right? We just jammed. What do writers and artists do, right? I don't know what that's called, except collab a little bit. But they were throwing ideas and talking, and Steve didn't want to push kind of an idea on him. But it was a couple of years later that Wrightson actually reached out to him. Oh, and they happened to find out that they actually lived a few blocks away from each other in LA. So they were neighbors. They never knew it.
That's crazy.
It is, but Wrightson said, he reached out to Niles and says, hey, I got a couple ideas. I'm thinking about getting back into comic books. What do you think? And next thing you know, they started hanging out in their own words, lots of pizza, lots of beer. And they said, beer is definitely a good fuel for the old creativity. And they started thinking about a world to build. This world would be filled with, a lot of the normal monsters that we kind of hear, see, read about, watch. However, they were going to put their own unique spin on it. One of their first ones to come out was City of Others. How familiar are you with Steve Niles?
I will be perfectly honest with you. I know this will bring great shame upon many comic book nerds, but I wasn't familiar. okay, so I was familiar with both of them in the sense that I knew of them, right?
Okay.
But even Bernie Wrightson, I honestly didn't know really much of his legacy until I started doing some research. And then I was like, oh, wow, Swamp Thing. Like,
Yeah.
and like the litany of other things. And the same thing with Steve Niles. Interesting fact, Steve Niles was born in New Jersey, Jackson, New Jersey, which for people that live in, I live in what's called Ocean County, New Jersey. He's literally 45 minutes away. Now he grew up in Washington apparently, but still, that's an interesting piece of trivia. But to answer your question, yeah, I wasn't really familiar with either of these guys, resume. Like I said, I knew of them, but I wasn't familiar with their work.
Oh, that's cool. He, like you said, he was born in Jersey, grew up in DC, and through the influences of Romero, John Carpenter, and Bernie Wrightson, right, he pursued a path of becoming an author. More specifically, a horror-themed writer-author, to the point where even, Fangoria, the magazine said, hey, Steve Niles, he's definitely one of these guys to watch. And sure enough, he created a solid foundation of work to which he kind of worked on Disney's webtoons. I forget exactly what it's called. Toy Story webtoons. That's what it was. And now he's doing horror. How do you go from
a transition, right?
To infinity and beyond to roar? It's crazy.
Well, in the past, some Disney animators have expressed horror at working under the big mouse.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it can be they can be quite control freaks. So maybe he took his frustration and rage from working for all the executives over at Disney and took that anger and channeled it into horror projects.
But yeah, I mean, it would only make sense, right? Because like you said, Disney is a bit of a control freak to the point where I'm sure folks, if you're in the comic book world or getting introduced to it, right? Disney, I think it was, I want to say around 2017, 2018. I forget exactly the year. But what Disney ended up doing was sending out a bunch of cease and desist orders to like lots of artists at some of these conventions that says, you can't draw any of our characters. Well, remember who they just acquired, right? Marvel.
Yeah.
A lot of your local artists that were trying to draw, like, it's like, oh, I got to abide by this cease and desist order. But if you've been to recent comic book conventions, they just gave a big old middle finger to Disney and said, we're going to draw what we want. Rightfully so.
Yeah.
Hey. But getting back to Steve Niles. Yes, he laid a foundation. He started off with Disney's Toy Story webtoons. He actually worked for Todd McFarlane on a couple issues, writing some of his books. One of the ones, Spawn. Oh, another project he worked on for DC Comics was Batman, Gotham After Midnight, or something like that.
Okay,
which was kind of like a horror-ish theme of Batman, which was a pretty cool read. He continued on, and all this time he's been shopping around this screenplay that he was trying to get someone to pick up and develop into a movie. He finally got someone to take a look at it, and this movie is called 30 Days of Night, which is a pretty good vampire flick, right? Definitely a different take on the vampire legend. To also work with Sam Raimi on that, it's fantastic. He did another movie. It was called Remains. I want to say it was 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Another horror zombie movie in Vegas where survivors get holed up, and it plays out as a typical zombie survival horror movie. And I don't know how many people remember. I don't know if even you remember. What was it? The Chiller Network?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
Chiller Network, which was kind of like one of the first horror-only type TV channels, but they unfortunately shuttered. I think it was 2017.
Yeah,
but it's on Tubi, so it's for free. If you like Steve Niles, you like 30 Days a Night, you want to check it out. It's one of those, I want to turn off my brain, be brain dead, and just watch something. It's one of those type of flicks.
Mm-hmm.
So now switching over to Bernie Wrightson. So folks, Bernie Wrightson, the master of the macabre, legend. If you've listened to our Frankenstein episode, you will kind of get a lot of glimpses into Bernie Wrightson from my historical recollection.
Mm-hmm.
However, for those that don't remember, Bernie Wrightson, Baltimore, Maryland native, born in Dundalk, which if you live in Maryland, the area of Dundalk is kind of like that running joke of, don't tell him where I was born. Don't tell him where I was born. One of his first jobs, he was an illustrator at the local paper, which is now kind of the city paper, the Baltimore Sun.
Oh, okay.
They're still in print, right? They're still running. They're still more of an online presence.
Mm-hmm.
However, Bernie writes at all this time, he learned how to draw. Like, folks, ask yourself, right? Man, I wish I learned how to draw. I wish I knew how to draw. Bernie Wrightson was right there with you. Mm-hmm. He learned to draw by reading EC comics, reading other comic books. But here's the fascinating point that you all should take, that you could do anything, right? You just got to apply yourself and do it. He primarily learned how to draw from back in the day. They called them correspondence courses.
Oh, okay.
Which is, for those who don't know exactly, you paid some money. It was kind of like going to school, right? You paid them some money. They send you these packets and say, this is what you're going to learn. Here's a booklet for you to practice. Once you're done, send it back to us, and then we'll send you some feedback. Yes, folks. There was no email back in those days. So shut up about that.
We remember the time before email.
Yeah, exactly. So he started as an illustrator, and then of all people that he himself met at a convention, Bernie Wrightson met up and introduced himself to Frank Frazetta.
Oh, wow.
Folks, if you don't know who Frank Frazetta is, yes, I'm going to say it. Stop this video. Go do some research on Frank Frazetta, one of the most legendary, prolific artists out there. From there, he got kind of like more inspired to, further and refine his craft to the point where Bernie Wrightson's first professional work was published in DC's House of Mystery number 179. I should have pulled my copy out, but I didn't. But that's
shame on you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, I should have.
Lord, it's awesome that you own that thing. That's a piece of history. So yeah,
a little personal pride point in terms of House of Mystery, that comic series. I own every single issue from 174 to its final printing of number 321.
How many years did it, just curiosity piece, side note here, how many years did it take you to collect the whole collection?
Oh, gosh. I want to say, God, I've been collecting since I was a kid, lost a bunch of issues. I want to say it was like, almost 20 years in total to find copies that solidified my collection.
Wow.
But it's worth it because some of those books now, whoa, you want to talk about a premium.
Yeah. Yeah.
But moving along, he started establishing himself, right? Like, man, look at this guy's artwork. He's fantastic. He teamed up with the legendary Len Wein to create Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
One of the most prolific DC characters that still exists to today. A few years ago, there was a DC animated movie that brought to life on screen, not the live action movies, which they're still fun to me.
Yeah.
But an animated version of Swamp Thing. Another point, and we'll revisit Wrightson at another time, but I want to talk about him. And there was a point in his life, I want to say it was 1975. Bernie Wrightson, Jeff Jones, Michael Kaluta, and Barry Windsor Smith.
Wow.
But they moved together into a little studio apartment in New York, and they simply called it, or it was a loft, actually, and they just called it the studio. And it was an area where they could just let their creativity fly. There is a compilation book. It's still out there. I think you can find copies on eBay. Just, man, you talk about legends getting together. And again, musicians jam. I don't know what artists call it besides collabing.
Yeah.
I don't know. One of the other artists that worked on this book, City of Others, His name is Jose Villarubbia.
Yeah.
This guy is phenomenal when it comes to artwork, and especially coloring.
Yeah.
Digital coloring. This guy is phenomenal. He was born in Madrid, Spain. Guess what? His family moved to Baltimore, Maryland, and grew up. Folks, you know what? The 1980. So, folks, we talk a lot of crap about Baltimore, rightfully so. But man, you want to talk about history and historic figures coming out of Maryland? Man, Baltimore had its very, very fair share. He's a prolific artist, illustrator, colorist, worked with DC, worked with Marvel, several indie books. Matter of fact, I want to say it was DC Vertigo. I don't know if you've ever read the series or seen the live action show called Sweet Tooth.
Oh, Jeff Lemire, man. I love Jeff Lemire. Yes. Graphic novel and a great Netflix series.
Jose Villarubbia
Nice.
worked on that entire series doing the coloring.
Oh, wow.
So it's fantastic, right? This is a trio that brought something. Yes, it's kind of been done before, but there's just something magical, special about this series, this graphic novel.
Well, sometimes they say, and again, not to give my thoughts away either, sometimes they say it's not what's been done before, but it's what's been done before and what you do to put your mark on it to make it different and stand out.
Yes, absolutely.
And again, I'm saving my thoughts. I'm biting my tongue because I'm excited to share my thoughts, but I'm saving them. They're enthusiastic, though. And
to wrap up the basic synopsis of this graphic novel, City of Others, Niles and Wrightson, again, they got together to build a world. And within that world, they actually produced 4 series that kind of tie into each other, right? The second book, which I cannot find for the life of me, and it's driving me nuts, it's called Doc Macabre. And basically think of that as the main protagonist, Dr. Macabre, as a souped up version of a Ghostbuster, but doesn't fight just ghosts, right? So he uses technology to handle the mythos of vampires, demons, zombies, stuff like that, right? The other book, I'm going to show it right here, Dead She Said, is about a detective who was killed and turns into a zombie, but a fully functional zombie. And for those folks who want to know what Steve Niles' autograph looks like,
well, it's big as hell, that's for sure.
There you go. Steve Niles on the bottom, Bernie Wrightson on top.
Wow. That's awesome.
The book, the series that they came up with continues in another book they did called The Ghoul, right? And the Ghoul this is a creature kind of like a smarter version of Solomon Grundy.
Okay.
But in that book, they bring in Doc Macabre. They bring in private detective Cooper from Dead She Said. And what was going to happen was another series was going to get published that finally brings in our main character from City of Others, Stosh
Blazkowski or
Blazkowski, yeah. Unfortunately, again, if you listen to our episode on Frankenstein, if not, Bernie Wrightson's health really started taking a toll on him. And unfortunately, in 2017, he had passed.
Sucks.
The world that Niles and Wrightson had started creating was pretty much finished. The thoughts of, and I guess this is a question for you, right? So when you have 2 prolific people, one definitely a legend who try to create something, should you continue it? Would you continue along it? Because from my point of view, yeah, you could, but the problem you have is Niles and Wrightson had the ideas, had the storyboards, had the timeline of events. Could you replicate it? I don't know.
Yeah, it's always tough, right? Like I always get annoyed by bands that, like for like the music analogy would be like bands that with like Stone Temple Pilots, one of my favorite 90s.
Oh, STP.
And there have been some people that have picked up the voice. I think they have a female singer now, and she's not bad, right? And they put out some new original music, and she's not bad. She's good, right? But it's just not Scott Weiland. You know what I mean? And I know that it's still like good, but it still kind of reminds me of like a really good karaoke version of Scott Weiland with her own twist. And it's not bad. It's still, I'm sure it's still probably a really good experience. So I'm kind of torn. Like I'm torn in the middle ground. I feel like like in this scenario, how much did they have plotted out for the future? If they had it all laid out and they found someone that wasn't similar in art style to Bernie Wrightson, possibly. Like, I don't want, like, you know how, like, in comic book world, people that know comic books, they know Todd McFarlane's style. Yeah. I remember before he moved on to Image, he got my attention through Amazing Spider-Man. Yeah. He eventually said, screw this, I'm not doing this anymore. Who took over? Erik Larsen. Now, anyone that's familiar with Erik Larsen, at the time, I don't know if it was Marvel telling him this. I haven't read a lot of recent Erik Larsen stuff, but it was basically him trying to imitate Todd McFarlane when he took over for Todd McFarlane on Amazing Spider-Man. Like, really, there was very little distinction between the art style in Amazing Spider-Man between Todd McFarlane and Erik Larsen. So, like, for me, that doesn't make sense. Now, if you can have your own unique art style and you have like a roadmap that's plotted out fairly well, then I say go for it. If you have the right writer to flesh it out and you have a distinction in art style, I say go for it. But I feel like, to answer your question in the longest way possible, you need certain key elements, right? If you don't have those key elements, it's going to fall on its face and it's just going to piss off some fans. The reality is that even if all the elements do come into place and it's unique and the art style is different and it's a fully fleshed out story, you're probably still going to piss off some Bernie Wrightson fans.
No, that's completely fair. And, you know, it's one of those things. I think you and I both agree, right? Whether it's a book, a comic book, a movie, a TV show, if you can get a solid storyline going and filled with solid stories, folks will eventually come around, if not outright embrace it. You know, you used McFarlane as an example.
Yeah.
One of the lingering things that McFarlane has done in terms of the Spider-Man universe, his webbing. I don't know if you ever noticed, but like ever since McFarlane came onto the scene and the way he drew all the crazy webbing with the different squiggly lines and stuff like that. Before that, it was just straight lines with the little U's to make it look like a spider web. Yeah. Every artist since then has done the crazy webbing, which even in the movies, they do the crazy webbing. That's his legacy. Erik Larsen, for folks who've paid attention to our intro, one of his greatest claims to fame, he was one of the people who introduced the character of Carnage with Spider-Man issue number 361. Again, if you watch the intro, you'll see my copy hanging up on the wall. But even Erik Larsen himself said, you know, screw that. I'm going to Image. I'm going to go ahead and do what was it, Savage Dragon?
Yeah, I think that was his. I think that was the one that he created. I think that was his baby.
Yeah, but you know, the beauty in Niles and Wrightson, not only with City of Others, Doc Macabre, Dead She Said, The Ghoul, they also collaborated on one other miniseries that, again, folks, and I'm going to keep plugging it because I need folks to keep going back and watching our episode on Frankenstein by Guillermo del Toro. Niles and Wrightson came up with a miniseries called Frankenstein Alive, where they continued the story of what happened to Frankenstein after.
Ooh, nice.
And it's pretty damn good. It's pretty damn good. Again, premium on those issues. Get the graphic novel if you don't want to spend, if you don't collect single issues. But
yeah,
you had two great worlds, right? In terms of an artist's vision with his ideas, a writer's vision with his storytelling capability. And here we are with City of Others. Now, having said all that, let's give a quick synopsis of what City of Others entails in terms of the book. And the book opens up with a young lady getting pulled over by customs because she's just arrived from Venezuela. Well, folks, if you know anything about Central America, you know what their biggest exporter is, right?
It's coffee, right? It's got to be coffee. Everybody loves coffee.
Well, it definitely starts with a C. So let's just say that. So they pull her aside, but she starts complaining about grabbing at her stomach and says, get it out, get it out. And then next you know, you turn the page and holy crap, her middle splits open and you see this head popping up out of it and basically says, you heard the lady, get it out. And then next thing you know, these goons come in, fire up the place, and here comes one guy wheeling in a headless body in a wheelchair, and they attach the head to the body. What the hell? What's going on here?
Yeah, it definitely threw me off right from the get-go.
Right? And it was great.
What the fuck am I looking at? What am I reading?
Exactly.
But in the best way possible, yes.
Yeah, it's great. And then you get a little glimpse into a group of well-dressed gentlemen who receive a phone call that says, Chunks has arrived. And you're like, okay, so dude's name is Chunks. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Then we're introduced to he's not our hero. He's more of an anti-hero, Stosh Blakowski, who we see enter a older man's movie theater. Wink, wink, nod, nod. He sits down and he basically, the patron right in front of him, he snaps his neck.
Yeah.
And on the way out, you get one guy, I didn't see nothing. I didn't see nothing. Well, he deals with him. Yeah. And the poor booth attendant says, you owe me for going in. And yeah, he deals with him. And the backstory, the wording that you kind of hear in the narrator's voice, which is Blakowski, we're going to call him Blood for short. He basically says that's what he does best. And he has zero feelings about it. Further along, Blood goes to a newsstand and he meets this young homeless lady who asks for some spare change. Her name is Katie. He helps Katie out and he goes home. You get some more backstory to him. I don't want to give a whole lot away because it is kind of a short series. Yeah, that you really should read it to really get the depth and kind of envision where they were going with the series. However, he gets an email and he goes, thank God, another job. Well, he goes to find these two guys who he thinks are just crackheads. So he begins to apply his special skill set, but they don't die. Well, he just happens to know that in his world, there are things called monsters, and he just ran into a couple of them. He's trying to figure out what's going on, what is happening here. So he starts following what he finds and starts following more of these zombies, pretty much more or less, onto a train. And as they're going through, he's taking note that not only on this train are there zombies, but there's humans that are just like, okay, yeah, come on, Billy, don't touch that man, And then the next thing you know, he's like, they're all getting off the train, except it's still moving. Yeah. And the zombies just start diving out the window onto the snowbank. So he follows, and that's a gorgeous piece, by the way. Oh my gosh. So he follows this group as they're walking through this snowy forest, and it is snowing. He sees atop of this like mountaintop or hilltop, a giant like lodge, right? Like ski lodge or whatever you want to call it. Next thing you know, he runs into a horse and he starts talking to the horse. And of course he gets knocked out. He wakes up to find that he's laying on a table around these folks. He's like, oh crap, am I dead? Are these guys undertakers? Wait a minute. He's smiling. They're not undertakers. It's funny stuff. But he's introduced to, I guess you could say, the leader. And of course, his name is Guido.
Yeah, it took me like for a certain point to find his name because at first they didn't name him until like a couple pages later. Finally, they mentioned his name. I'm like, what the hell, man?
Exactly.
I'm trying to take notes here. God damn it.
And I think that was the brilliance of that part, right? Is you know he's a leader, but you don't quite know his name yet. But Guido is there with his son Tomas, and they begin to recount their story. And what Blood learns from Guido's story is that long ago, They were part of this village that got decimated, and it was decimated by a man called Artemis. Well, Artemis happened to be I guess you could say, a dark alchemist who used to work for the regional lord there called Casco. As with things, Artemis kind of does some naughty things with his family, and Casco is driven to revenge. And the only way he can figure out how to get his revenge was to find a cache. That's the only word I can think of right now, of vampires, and force the head vampire to turn him. The reason why he's doing this is because the story recounts how Artemis, as a dark alchemist, figured out a secret of how to transfer his living brain to another body, basically living forever and changing identities. Very hard to find. Well, as they're recounting the story, Blood's like, all right, I get it. You know what? This is kind of messed up. And then he says, and there's a bunch of zombies outside already. He's like, yeah, there's thousands, hundreds of them. And then there's this 2-page panel spread. Absolutely gorgeous. Where he's like, yep, there's 1,000 and there's a lot more coming, because through some binoculars, he's looking right at these zombie faces. The zombies pretty much start attacking, right? Because the clock goes, oh, it's midnight. Next thing you know, the zombies start attacking. So, of course, Guido goes, oh, that's chunks for you. How droll. It's like, what's going on? And what we learned is that, again, Guido, Tomas, and his entire clan in that lodge are vampires. So vampires are going to be fighting zombies. And there's this huge battle. Blood takes a mortal wound. He's only human. So he takes a mortal wound as everything's going on. Guido pulls him aside and basically gives him a choice. He's like, number one, you can just die. Number two, I could just kill you, make it really quick. Or number three, you can become one of us, and fight on our behalf. Keep our line going. Keep our clan going. Blood accepts. He says, you know what? Yeah, give it to me. Guido turns Blood by simply, feeding him some of his blood. And then he throws him down this like shaft down to an aqueduct, which carries him out. And I guess it feeds into the city. All of a sudden, Blood finds himself, as he's recounting this stuff, he starts thinking about his childhood. Dude, you want to talk about some horror writing and some messed up stuff? That's a section to read, because he talks about how, as a 7-year-old kid, yeah, he handled business.
Business. Yeah, that's putting it mildly.
Oh, my goodness gracious. He comes out of this manhole and he's trying to make his way back. He stumbles into Katie, who tries to help him back. And there's another gorgeous scene where, as they get to his place, there's a panel which, he looks at Katie's face, and the way it's colored and the way it's penciled, you see all these like red veins, right? You see him turning, forces her away. Next thing you know, he starts getting, like, I guess you could say, hungry. He wants something in his belly. And he comes up with an intruder to his place, and he dispatches him. How? Because he jumps on him with his fangs all coming out and just, yeah. Dinner time. He starts realizing what being an other is, right? Which is part of the vampire, I guess you could say, lineage. However, as Guido explained to him, and you're going to have to read the details. Yeah, we're pretty much vampires, but we're not really vampires. Like, we can go out in the sun, but like humans, we can get skin cancer too. So it's not. Well, what had happened was Katie had stole his wallet, of course, because she's homeless. She had a substance abuse problem, let's just say. And Blood sees her getting mugged, robbed by 3 guys. He dispatches them, finds his wallet, and then finds that Katie's OD'd. Okay, and she is dying. So basically, what does he do? Without even giving her the choice, he feeds Katie some of her blood. While that's happening, we also get some panels that during the battle, Tomas was captured by Chunks' zombies. And what you learn is, and this is where I think it's kind of fascinating, even though it was like 2007 when this came out, what you realize is Chunks' zombies weren't like zombies in the traditional sense, like Night of the Living Dead and all that good stuff. They were controlled by technology, digital chips implanted into their brains. Folks, if you have any ideas of, oh yeah, I'm going to put some chips in my brain, turn me into a supercomputer. Well, you got an alternative version of events that could happen. So think about it. But he captured Tomas and he's basically torturing Tomas. What is your secret? I'm going to find it. And he's like, because Tomas is undead. He's a vampire type. He's an other. You see a panel where Chunks has basically got him disemboweled. Half his lower half is gone. And Tomas is cracking jokes like, I'm still not going to tell you. What are you going to do? Skin me alive? Oh, man, it's great. It's great. Because what you're finding is Chunks, again, is Artemis from the earlier legends. He understands how he can keep himself immortal, but that's a hassle, right? Your brain, you saw it at the beginning of the series, right? You got to get carried around in someone's So he wants their secret so he can stay immortal without having to change bodies all the time. Thomas isn't giving it up. Well, Katie, of course, through Blood's actions, has become another herself. And basically, as they go through it, he's trying to start teaching her, right? And while he's teaching her, remember what I said earlier, Blood was like this emotional hitman serial killer, if you want to, kind of put it in the most extreme terms. However, he's starting to feel things like I like teaching her stuff he never felt before. He's like, what's going on? I'm not quite sure what's happening. And before the conclusion of the book, we see Chunks once again, except he has the head of the lady at the beginning of the book. Like, I need another assistant. And we're going to put you with this volunteer who I lobotomized, and you're going to get a new body. And that's kind of like the setup, because the closing of the book shows Blood and Katie standing on top of this, building. I think it was a butcher district. And they're looking out across the city, of course, and the skies, it's turning to dusk, crimson skies. And basically they're saying, you know what? I think we're vampires. We're going to find out together. We got nothing but time. I feel like, screw that. I feel, and it's great. And the book says the end ? Basically, it's a story somewhat of redemption or evolution, however you want to take it. So you take a unfeeling hitman serial killer who becomes kind of like a mentor, trying to learn about what he is now. Along the way, he's helping Katie, who apparently he took pity on. He didn't feel anything before, but now he feels a connection with her. All the while, you have this new character, Chunks, aka Artemis, who is trying to find the secrets of him. And the future is a what could have been.
Yeah.
Now, before I get into my thoughts, John, as you have stated, you were not familiar with this title or series, or very familiar with their collaboration, their works.
No, I wasn't.
This is a book that was never on your radar, from my understanding. So
no. I mean, I just wasn't aware of it. Like so many other things put out into the world, the comic book world, so much, and sometimes the hardest problem is just being aware of it so that you can give it a read. That is true. That is true. The amount of direct that they throw out there nowadays, it's hard to find that little gem in the pile. Yeah. So to that effect, I want to hear your thoughts on City of Others by Steve Niles and Bernie Wrightson and Jose Villarubbia. Yeah, no. So, I mean, literally, as I was reading it, I was blown away, just because, number one, you had talked about Bernie Wrightson on our Frankenstein episode. And I'm not going to lie, as I was seeing you show the artwork, and then I was thinking in my review, I was going, man, God damn it, he really fucking took a lot from Bernie Wrightson. Del Toro, you better be like throwing some big old bucks at his wife, because you took a whole lot. But I went into this and not knowing what to expect. I've only seen those clips that you popped up on our episode of Frankenstein. I was like, okay, well, the art style I definitely like. And I was just blown away by the art, obviously, by the coloring, by the writing between Wrightson and Niles. For me, I love genre stuff. I love creature features. Like, I'll go back and watch, I think on Caliber 9, they did Creature from the Black Lagoon this week. They just
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
And I love stuff like that, dude. I love the Frankenstein movies, even though some of the later ones, which aren't quite as strong, but they're still interesting. So I love werewolves. I love zombie stuff. I love creature stuff. So right off the get-go, you kind of hit my sweet spot. But like any movie, graphic novel, book, you have me in with that, but how do you keep my attention? You keep my attention by taking an established genre. And again, like I mentioned earlier, briefly, you take that and you shape it and mold it and you create your own world and you put your own unique spin on this world, right? And I think right off the get-go, they did that. I mean, first of all, you're reading the first couple pages and you're like, is this like a fucking drug book? You know, this lady being cut open, and then you're like, hold on, no, it's definitely not drug. There's a horror. They got this fucking head talking like it's about time you got me out, basically. So I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of weird, but I'm down for this journey. And then we go from there, and then we're like, okay, well, now I'm introduced into this like cold-hearted, like emotionless killer, and I'm like, okay, I love like emotionless killers. I love the lone assassin, the anti-hero. So we get introduced to that world, and you find out that he's never been able to process any kind of emotions before, and he lives his life doing these jobs not because he needs the money, but just because it gives him something to fucking do.
Yeah,
you know? Because he doesn't want to get lost in his inability to feel anything. So he takes one job after the other, even though he probably could have retired a long time ago. And then we further that story along, and like I said, you introduce, this zombies, and then you introduce the vampires, and before you know it, you're like, holy shit! And, it's only about 100 pages, but before you know it, like, I probably read this in less than 20 minutes the first time, and then I went back and reread it this morning, of course, too. And what they do in 100 pages is very difficult, because in order to tell a really good story, like with combining art and writing in 100 pages and tell a really compelling story, it can be a challenge. And they do that because you get all these creatures. You get the story about an assassin that can't feel anything. And then you get this whole element with the vampires. And, he becomes allies with the vampires. And then the vampires explain the story of this villain Chunks and how he came to be and what his mission is. And the next thing you know, just when you think it can't get any better, go any further up in the pantheon of good writing and good art, they put this twist on it because they give you this emotional thing, which I really love. I love the idea of giving some sort of connection with our characters. And I like the idea of anti-heroes. Most anti-heroes are usually quiet. They're usually the cold assassin that doesn't say much. and that's cool. I love that. But then I love the fact that this guy, being alive, he couldn't feel anything. I mean, we literally see some pretty horrific scenes and some flashbacks of him doing some pretty horrible things from even very early on in his life. Part of what makes him, I guess, this perfect assassin, this perfect antihero, is that he can't feel any emotions. But then after he's forced to become a vampire or die, basically, for the first time in his life, now that he's undead, he's finally able to feel emotions.
Yeah.
It's like experiencing a slice of pizza for the first time in your life. From your entire life. And some people are going to be like, I don't like pizza. Well, fuck you if you don't like pizza.
Yeah, right.
But like, imagine never eating a slice of pizza for 50 years. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, this is so delicious. You know what I mean? Like, and I know it's a bad analogy, but the idea is there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You're able to feel something for the first time. He feels a sense of flood of emotions. He wants to help this girl, Katie, because she's about to die. So, he does. He saves her life, and then he kind of becomes like a mentor. And like I said, there's all this just world building to this really compact 100-page story. It's amazing. I mean, it's the perfect marriage of art and writing. And then, of course, like I said to you beforehand, and this is nobody's fault, the biggest fault in this and in this whole thing is the fact that because Bernie Wrightson is no longer alive, and it's been since 2017.
17. Yep.
Yeah, I just don't know if we're going to ever get any kind of continuation, or some people might think maybe we shouldn't do a continuation because of Wrightson not being around and his lack of involvement. I don't know. That's a whole nother, we touched on that. That's a whole nother debate. So that my biggest criticism is that I want more.
Yeah.
I got 100 pages. I got suckered in, and I feel like even though it's 100 pages, I feel like we just basically had a really 100-page long prologue. They told a story, but it felt like they're all leading up, and then they just feel like cock teases, man. I feel like I'm at the strip club. That's why I don't go to the strip club, guys. Number one, I don't make a lot of money, but B, I'm not going to get laid. Why am I going to just throw dollar bills in the some fucking stripper's G-string? Okay. And that's what this was. At the very end, I was like, God damn it! Why did he have to fucking die? Selfishly, I want more story.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, no. This is a really great pick on your part. Listen, immediately after I read it the first time Thursday night, I went on Amazon and I ordered the hardcover of City of Others. And now that I know that these other 3 books you have in your background there are they're in the same world and they connect in some way, I'm going to definitely be trying to hunt down the graphic novels for those as well. You definitely, you did good, son. You picked a really good. You did awesome, dude. You picked a really great graphic novel. Like I said, the perfect marriage of story and art. Because as you know, being a longtime comic reader, sometimes we get an awesome story, but you don't get an artist that you're crazy about. Or sometimes you get an artist that's absolutely mind-blowing, but you don't get the story to complement it.
Yeah.
And, I'm a little more forgiving on the artwork if the story's stronger. But in this medium, you really kind of want both. You really can't go wrong. If you like good writing, if you like genre stuff, go on Hoopla, man. Even give it a read for free. It won't cost you a dime. And if you like it, go buy the graphic novel. You can buy the paperback for like $10 on Amazon. And I think if you get like the hardcover, it might be like 16 or 20. So it's not expensive. You know what I mean?
No, it's not. And having heard that, I'm thrilled, ecstatic that you actually enjoyed it, because
I loved it, dude. Loved it.
Like you, myself, having read it at first, it was like, oh my gosh, yes, it's familiar. Yes, we know about it, but this is a brand new world, right? Sure. And it's a new world being created by Steve Niles and Bernie Wrightson. Yeah. And, I had met, as people know, I've met Wrightson several times over the years when he came to Baltimore Comic-Con. Steve Niles, for a couple years, was coming to the Baltimore Comic-Con, hence how I was able to get both to autograph my books. They're not for sale unless you're going to offer me an obscene amount, people. But being able to talk to Wrightson and Niles about this world, it was fantastic. Yeah, well, if you like this, man, we got a lot more coming. Stay tuned. But again, real life sucks. Cancer sucks.
Yeah.
We lost Wrightson. As you said, City of Others, Doc Macabre, Dead She Said, and The Ghoul. They are available on Hoopla. It's free, folks. Go check them out. But if you want history, for me, it's like if I wanted a piece of history, I'm going to buy a piece of history. I did. Again, my piece of history is I got both creators to autograph it. And here's the beautiful thing with City of Others specifically. If I wanted to get Jose Villarubbia's autograph, I probably could. He still works at the Maryland Art House down here in Baltimore, Maryland, right? He teaches classes. I might have to sign up for a class, but I'm pretty sure I could get him to autograph it. Which leads me into the next thing about what I really loved about this book. So folks who have not seen Frankenstein, pause this video, or immediately after this video, go watch that episode, because as I explained in that video, Wrightson, due to a hand injury he suffered, he could no longer draw holding pencil or ink or stylus vertically, right? He had to hold it horizontally. So folks, just try to write horizontally. Now, look at the artwork that he did for this book in pencil. There's a reason why he is a legend.
Yeah.
The other thing that I loved about this book, and I think in the 10th anniversary edition in the Ford, Niles talks about it. Wrightson was excited to do this book. He had one caveat. this was going to be all pencils, no ink.
Mm.
So when you get Jose Villarubbia's inking coloring style on top of these pencils, the artwork is gorgeous because, yes, it's pencil. There is no ink, but when you blend both, it looks like coloring pencils, right? Those highly quality, rich depth tones, the coloring that it enhances the pencil work is beautiful. Some of the scenes, folks, stick around for the outro. You're going to see some of the artwork from this book. It is absolutely stunning what they put together. Dead She Said, Doc Macabre ups the ante. Dead She Said, Bernie Wrightson brings back the inks. You want to talk about some amazing pieces in a pretty cool story. Wow. The Ghoul takes it back into a blend of the old 80s style of artwork he used to do. Fantastic stuff. However, like you, we lost Wrightson. Again, rest in peace, bud. The world that they were trying to build kind of got locked away. Right? I don't know if you've ever read the series called Hack Slash by Tim Sweely. Have you ever read that?
I know of it, definitely,
Okay.
but I haven't read it. Yeah.
Okay, so if you know of it, that in itself is a world of its own, right? Another genre horror item where the girl, the hero, the heroine, her name is Hack, and she teams up with another guy named Vlad, and she survives a slashing from a serial killer. So that's what she does, right? Her and Vlad go out to handle business, but it's a world in its own self. Niles and Wrightson were going along that path. Yes, that, like you said, right, they're about 100 pages. They all feel kind of incomplete. Well, guess what, folks? Those were all cliffhangers. They were meant to feel incomplete because they wanted you to keep coming back for more, and rightfully so. It wasn't a hard sell to come back.
Oh, not at all.
It was not a hard sell. So I'll be interested. We'll talk. Maybe we do another one future down the road. But I want to hear your, as you get them and read them.
Yeah,
talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because this is a world that I think had a lot of potential, a lot of promise. Wow, it's a shame we're not going to see it again. Whether they, Steve Niles picks it up and decides to go with another artist. Yeah, as long as the story is great, I will be okay with it. I know Bernie, not to speak for his family or himself, but I believe, having known him for so many years, he would have given happily the mantle. I mean, I think about, God, which series was it? Frankenstein Alive was a series where that kind of situation, he had a downturn in his health. He couldn't finish the 4th issue. And I want to say back then, his old friend
Kelly
Jones came to finish out the series, and it's fantastic. Is there that possibility? Man, I would like to think there is. Do I think it's ever going to happen? I want to hope it does.
Yeah,
I really do. City of Others, Niles, Wrightson, Villarubbia, I thought was a fantastic book. I love that you were excited and really read it with enthusiasm. I'm really glad, and I hope folks out there in the audience, if you're tired of the same old in terms of comics, yes, this is old. Yes, it's in a trade paperback format. But if you want something different, you like monsters, you like horror, you like those themes. Again, Hoopla digital, it's free. It's worth the while. It's worth the while.
Absolutely. You definitely can't go wrong, guys. Yeah. Absolutely. Good choice. Yeah. Good choice.
With all that said, I think that's the end of our episode on this book, City of Others, again by Niles and Wrightson. In the meantime, John, who else should we be listening to or watching?
Okay, so we're going to start with Night of the Living podcast. I got it right this time.
Yeah.
Check those guys out. I actually just started listening to them this week. I feel I'm surprised. I knew of them before, but I had some time in between, right? All my other podcasts. Let's start listening to these guys. And these guys are great. Night of the Living podcast.
Oh, yeah. And just real quick, because we had talked off camera, folks, John apparently picked up and he kind of, no, don't twist my arm, John.
Yeah,
we're not going to go buy the original series of The Twilight Zone. They have they've been covering they called Zoned Out.
That's part of the reason. That's part of what prompted me to get it. I started listening to the show, and they had all these Twilight Zone episodes, and I'm like, oh man, I should like listen to the episode, watch the episode. You know what I mean?
It's
so
awesome.
Yeah, no. So check out Night of the Living podcast. Of course, we got Not a Bomb with Troy and Brad. These guys are always bringing it. Check out their show this week. They talked about the
Man with the Iron Fist.
Yes, Man with the Iron Fist. I couldn't think of the name. So that was their newest episode. They always take a look at films that were either commercial or critical failure. So check them out. Of course, we got Jose and Mike over at Watch Skip Plus. Check them out. They're doing a live episode as we're recording this right now. They're talking about Mike's experience at Sundance, the last Sundance, apparently. Yeah. So check them out. Of course, we have Sam and Will with The Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema. Every week, they talk about 2 films, and they give us a variety of different films, and it's always a different selection. This week, they gave us 2 Robert Redford films, Jeremiah Johnson, and I can't remember the other one because my memory isn't that good.
I thought it was The Sting. Was it The Sting?
Oh, was it the? Oh, maybe it was. I know there was definitely 2 Robert Redford films. I just don't remember the second title. It might have been The Sting though.
I'm just saying The Sting because my wife just bought another DVD copy of that movie. Great.
Oh, she did.
Great flick. Yeah, great flick. It's one of her favorites.
No, you can never go wrong with Redford. So check them out. Obviously, Caliber 9 with Rob and Joe. Every week they give us double feature. Always a good show. This week, like I said, one of their films was Creature from the Black Lagoon, which you can't go wrong with talking about creature features. And then, of course, we have Harry Scott Sullivan with Death by DVD, who says he will definitely be back sometime in March. So we're waiting for you, Harry. We're going to hold you to that. So thank you guys again for watching. We love doing these comic book episodes as well as our movie episodes. And we look forward to talking to you guys next week. Oh, one big plug I will announce is we're going to be doing back to last March. We did Animation Month. So, of course, we're going to continue our animation month this March. So we're going to be doing all animation, and I will keep them secrets for right now. They'll have some surprises to look forward to. So thank you guys for listening. If you like, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that share button, share it with your friends, and let the world know it. Okay? Thank you again, guys. Have a great weekend.
Have a good one.